just have learned so much from her, gained so much respect for her. She has literally made more trips to DC than I have. This is my 24th trip to DC. She's probably lost track of how many. She's made way more than I have. Not only does she know Title IV-E, but she also does know Title IV-D. She's an attorney, just a wealth of knowledge, one of the best leaders in the entire country, somebody I absolutely love to collaborate with. So please help me welcome Connie Reguli.
Yay. I think I need to. I can't make that leap. I'm way too old. Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. Well, good evening, everybody. First of all, before I talk about me, I want to give you all a little history lesson. Now, I'm old, so I am history, so I can talk about this. So, does anybody remember who the president was in 1974? And don't use your phone. Gerald Ford. One of the shortest presidents I think we ever had.
Nothing wrong with that, Connie.
Now listen, 1974. I remember 1974, y'all. I'm that old. I was in college by then. But think about what was going on during that time frame. So we had come out of World War II. We had the baby boomers because everybody had 2 or 3 kids in the 50s and 60s. And then we started with, unfortunately, some terrible things happened in America with assassinations and the civil rights movement. There was a lot going on. And we didn't even have social media back then. One of the first things that happened to the Social Security Act, which remember the Social Security Act was first passed in 1935 for aging, mainly. Then they added disability, then they added unemployment, and then they added AFDC, which was Title IV-A. Title IV-A was poverty, right? Now Congress in 1974 was full of a lot of middle-aged, angry white men. To be very honest with you, middle-aged, angry white men didn't like poverty. They didn't like poor people. And so they didn't like welfare. And one of the things that they did is they created a new rule, because especially the South was full of poor, white, single mamas. They created a new rule that said that before you could get welfare, you had to have a stable home. Now, most people who were poor, white, single moms didn't have a stable home. They needed welfare to get a stable home, so they didn't have it. So they wouldn't qualify for welfare until they started taking their kids away from them. Then they decided, these angry, white, middle-aged men decided, you know what? All those daddies that aren't around, which of course, you've got to also remember, about 1974 was when they privatized prisons. They needed to pump up the prison population. And so they arrested a lot of men, put them in prison, who then were absent fathers. They said, all those people getting welfare, we're going to go find those daddies, and we're going to make them pay back welfare. And 1974 was when CAPTA, the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, started, which started capturing all the kids for foster care, and the child support enforcement. That was 50 years ago, guys. After 1974, the narrative grew stronger, stronger, and stronger. I became a lawyer late in life. It was 1994. I was already 40 years old. I had a whole lifetime working among people, actually the hospitality industry. And so I went into the legal field with a little bit different perspective than most people who get out at 25 and start working in law, because I'd seen the real world. I knew real people who had real jobs, real families, etc. I stepped into that legal world, and if you all have seen the skit that George Carlin does about It's a Big Club and You're Not in It, that is exactly what the legal profession is about. I'm just going to be a little bit crude here, but I'm going to tell you the truth. Judges are stupid. Attorneys are mean. Experts are paid opinionators. Guardian ad litems are losers. That's the field that you're working in. That is absolutely the field that you're working in. And if you go into it as a lawyer, and I tell lawyers, every lawyer has a fork in the road in their career. And they stand at that fork in the road, and is it number one, am I going to play along with this game? Which means, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, you got to keep the courts busy. Or are you going to defend your client? Are you going to, when your client comes in your office, and I did tons of divorces, hundreds and hundreds of divorces. You have a client sitting in your office and they're telling you about, their 6-year-old son or their 10-year-old daughter, how they're worried about what's going to happen after a divorce. They're worried about finances, and they're worried about splitting property, and they're worried about overall the entire dynamic that will change during the divorce process. Nobody's thinking clearly. Nobody. Or if it's two people who had a child out of wedlock, and now they've got a baby they got to deal with, and they don't really like each other that much anymore. Nobody's thinking clearly. So I worked in the system, and I was too good at what I did. I'm just going to be honest with you, because here's what happened. When I defended my clients, when I stood up for a mother, and this was against the system, the child welfare system, but when I stood for her and I kicked back against an ex parte order, which I know earlier today we were talking about orders of protection. This was not because orders of protection are also ex parte orders. This was not an order of protection, but it was an ex parte removal order of her child. And I tried to cooperate with them. I called, I left them phone messages, I talked. Nobody would talk to me, nobody would call me back. They got an ex parte order to take her child away. It was a disabled child, I had a disabled mother. I was mad as nails, boy. I was so mad. So I told the mother, I said, look, just come on over. We were friends. By then I'd known her 5 years. I said, just come over to the house. You guys will be safe. I'll start calling the judge in the morning, because they had snuck around behind our back to do this. The next morning, my house was surrounded by police cars. And they took the child and the mother, right? They didn't arrest me right away. I fought them for 10 months. I got the child back. DCS dismissed their case. And then after I got kicked them in the tail, they came and arrested me and my client. Arrested her for custodial interference, and arrested me, her attorney, for accessory after the fact ×2 for a felony. Harboring a felon and aiding and abetting. Her attorney. And it actually says in the state law that legal representation is not accessory after the fact. But they had to shut me up. But to do this, they also had to change the law. They had to actually, a district attorney, 2 people in the police department, the state attorney, another district attorney, 5 people had to sit down and change the law to indict us. But the whole system needed to shut me down. And so the judge went along with it. Everybody went along with it. They sat me in front of a jury when I was 70 years old, never had a crime in my life, convicted me of 2 felonies. They wanted to kill me. I'm going to just tell you the truth. They wanted me dead, because I had no crime ever in my whole entire life. Even if I was a felon, which I was not, and we'll finish that, but it was a nonviolent felony. It would always be probation. And no. They wanted to lock me up for 30 days. In 30 days, they would have killed me. The county attorney came into court and says, Judge, she's way too dangerous to lock up in our county jail. We need to ship her to another county an hour away so they could kill me. I'm just going to be honest with you. They would have poisoned me in 30 days. But fortunately, with a good attorney, we were able to stay off, keep me on bond while I did an appeal. And of course, I won the appeal because they rewrote the law. But in the meantime, they stripped me of my law license with a fax. Now, I want you to think about this a minute. I went to law school, I went to night school, I had to go 5 years. I did internships, I worked my tail off to pass the bar, to be interviewed, had a private practice, had all these people for 30 years. And I get an overnight fax saying, oh, you're now a felon. You no longer have a law license. 40 or so clients pending. I had employees. I had a full office. Had an office staff. Had to shut it all down in 10 days. So I beat them, but they won't give me my license back. They don't want me back in the courtroom. But what do I do? And I want to move on to that because I'm still working hard and heavy. Here's what I've done. So about, say, Mark, what did he say, 12 years ago? I think when I first met him, I started the Family Forward Project on Facebook in about 2014, and I started collecting and gathering families across the country who would have been affected by the child welfare system. So we have 33,000 people in that group. I also, besides having written hundreds of briefs, doing civil rights cases, I started writing for an online publication called the Tennessee Conservative News. And I would write op-eds on my story lane is primarily Title IV-E. There's a lot of crossover, but I write stories about the abuses of Title IV-E and publish them in the Conservative News. I also started being a citizen lobbyist back in 2008 before it was really cool. And let me tell you guys, the first time I went down and talked to a state legislator, and I was talking to them about judges, and I sat in their office, I just walked in, asked to talk to them. I tell them, you know, you can remove judges in this state. And they would say, they'd go, who are you with? Always ask, who are you with? I say, well, myself, right? And so I found out after my first couple years of trying to lobby at the state legislative level that I needed one of two things. I either needed to have money to be able to hand out, or I needed numbers, okay? Numbers convert to votes. And that is another reason why I started the Family Forward Project. So now, when I walk into a state legislator or a congressional office, I say, my name is Connie Reguli. I'm one of the founders of the Family Forward Project. We have over 33,000 families across the United States who follow what we do and try to make an impact. So you need either numbers or money. You all have numbers, okay? I want to talk a little bit more about what I do. So at the state legislative level, and I talked to somebody earlier about that today, they need you guys. They need you. Mark is right. They do 1,500, 2,000 bills every year, and some of them are bad bills, and some of them are stupid. Do you know what we passed this year in Tennessee? I'm so glad. So our legislators, we have 99 legislators. Now they're limited to 7 bills each, but they get, it's a 2-year process, so they get 7 each year, so that's 14, whatever the math works out to be. And so I always work really hard to find a legislator who can get a bill for me. But you know what they spent a bill on this year? That you can have a raccoon for a pet. We also passed a new law in Tennessee that cousins could get married. I'm so happy. We spent all that legislative energy doing that. But I have gotten some laws passed at the state level, and it is work, but you can do it. Okay, I got one bill passed about ex parte investigative orders on anonymous phone calls. We got that one passed. This year I got a bill introduced for, and this is really a good one, they passed it in South Dakota for, and y'all should do this one too, that it was mandatory that if you're a state employee and you had knowledge of another state employee who had committed a crime or violated a conflict of interest or other official misconduct, that you were required to report it to your supervisor, who was required to report it to the Attorney General's office and to law enforcement. Because most of the people who work for the state, this can be at any level. It can be at CPS, it can be in child support enforcement or whatever. They are afraid to report misconduct. This law passed in South Dakota. So I got a sponsor and I worked the bill for him. I went around, I got 9 co-sponsors. I did his work for him. Okay, and you can do that too. In Tennessee, we have a little core group of about 8 grassroots, just everyday people who are lobbying, and organically we have met each other, and now we support each other. And we have specialties. My specialty is child welfare and foster care. We have one in disability, one in youth law, one in health freedom, one in education. And we don't have money, we just have numbers because we make our voices heard. So, this is what you need to do. This is your job now. Find out who your state rep is. Find out who your state senator is, your congressman, your senator. Put them all on your phone. I want their email and their phone number in your phone. All right? And at least one of them, I would say start with your state rep. You're going to send them an email this week and you say, hey, by the way, my name is Connie Reguli. I'm in your district. I have 4 children and 7 grandchildren. And I want you to know that I'm watching everything you do and I want you to help us out here in the community. Right? So start making that contact. And you're going to start talking to them. Go to county commission meetings. Go to school board meetings. I see some really cool people out here that should be running for school board. And let me tell you, you only need like 400 votes to get on the school board because people don't run for school board, okay? Go run for office. I've run for office twice. I didn't win. Doesn't matter. I ran. I got out there. I talked to people. And when we talked to Congress, now we did get a bill introduced, has not passed, but a family advocate bill. And when I bring families up to Washington, D.C. and take them to the offices to talk about the story, and then I tell them about some of the changes we need, I decided from child welfare to start with something simple. I said I wanted to start with something very simple. We introduced a very simple advocacy bill. We're still wearing ourselves out trying to get it passed. But when I sit in congressional offices, here's a couple of things I tell them. One of them is, look, we can do a whole lot more out there helping families than you all can do sitting in this office right here. Because if you guys have the right tools, you can make the changes. So if, Title 4D, I think just needs to be stricken. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. Makes no sense. All right, so I want to keep you guys on track. Please feel free to walk up, introduce yourself to me, and talk to me. I've already talked to a few people. I want to make you advocates. I want to make you strong citizen lobbyists, and I want you to feel comfortable about it. It's cool, it's interesting, and I'm just telling you, they need you. They need you to be experts in your area, and they need to be educated. Thank you very much.